Okay, we need to talk. There is a popular myth, a misconception that has been going around the speaking world for years. And it is this that 7% of your communication is the words that you speak. Therefore, meaning 97% of your communication is your tone of voice and your facial expressions. And this is not true. So stay with me in this short video. I'm going to break down for you why it's not true and what that research actually meant. So in this short video, I really just want to explain to you where that comes from and why it has been so popularly spread. We probably will take a look at a few more of these myths and misconceptions that get commonly spread around in the speaking world and often in the personal development world as well, particularly. This has come from work by a psychologist called Mehrabian, who was studying communication. And the communication was about determining the emotion of the speaker when they were speaking on stage. And so the words themselves turned out to be only about 7% of what helped people to determine the emotion of the speaker. It was actually the facial expressions and the tonality that helped people to be able to determine the emotion of the person speaking. And that's where this came from. So it isn't about your communication being 93% facial expressions and tone of voice. It's more about the emotional intent or the emotional state of the speaker being determined by the facial expressions and by the tone of voice. So if I was to say the words, "Hey John, you did a really good job," I say it fairly straight laced. There's not much vocal tonality there, not much facial expression there. What do you determine by that? You just hear the words. You have to take it on the words. So probably most of what you infer from that is somebody saying, "Hey, you did a really good job." If I had to say it this way, "Hey John, you did a really good job." You notice there was some tonality there was some facial expression there. How about if I say it this way, the same words? "Hey John, you did a really good job." Different tonality, different facial expressions. We determine a bit of sarcasm, but the words are the same. So you understand that the words create a certain amount of meaning, but we are determining the intent and the emotionality of the speaker by the facial expressions and the vocal tonality. The study that Mehrabian did showed that about 55% of communication in this way was from your facial expressions and 38% from your tone of voice. And that's where this myth has come from. So it's not actually your tone of voice or your facial expressions that are conveying the communication. Your words will do that. You could give a whole talk and presentation with no facial expressions. You could be Botoxed up to the hilt and not doing a single facial expression. And you could speak with a monotone and the words would pretty much still mean the same thing. But when you add in the tonality, the tone of voice, when you add in facial expressions, you add depth, you add range, you add emotional connection into this, and people can tell what you're really thinking, what you're really meaning. And it does help to clarify some of the communication and more the intention and the emotion of the person communicating. So if you ever find yourself saying that only 7% of your communication is the words you speak, remind yourself, no, it's not that. Only 7% of your communication helps people to determine the emotionality or the emotional intent of the speaker. The rest is done with tonality and body language or facial expressions. So let's put this myth to bed. And fair enough, if you have been repeating this or maybe even teaching this, and I certainly got taught it in one of my very first presentation skills training. And now that I know what it should actually be, and I'm very much like, I think people should have really checked up on this before they ever started teaching it. But it gets spread around as common science. But as soon as we start to pull it apart, it makes no sense whatsoever. Because I could do this whole video going, and you're not going to understand a damn thing. And even if I add facial expressions to that, you are not going to get what the meaning of this is without the words. Words are critical in your communication. They may not be 100% of your communication, of how we communicate, but they are most of it, probably more like 98%, with the other bits enhancing our communication. So don't buy into these myths and don't keep spreading them around either. And feel free to challenge people when they say that 93% of your communication is nonverbal, because it is bullshit.